Hello everyone, today I had every ambition to go over and make you a tier list of myself of all the heroes inside the game. And when I went over to the official Discord to go and get that tier list link, I came across this right here. This is what they're calling an end game tier list. Heroes to invest in, pretty much what everybody wants. Who should I be going after? And a lot of these players that contribute to this are above chapter 37 or around that mark. They're considering late game chapter 30. So it looks like 15 players have contributed to this whole tier list here. I'd love to get some names so we can give some acknowledgement, some appreciation for who did actually make the list, but this is going based by between 15 to 20 stars for the heroes. So I'm going to go into this open-minded as possible because they didn't rank my Babu in a good spot, but I'm not going to hold it against them. And just keep in mind that, as they say in here, if you have a 20-star of one hero and a 15-star of another one, that 20-star, of course, is going to trump and be way more powered than the one that's at a lower star. So use this as a guide, use this as a judgment, but don't hold this to every grain of salt as, man, you're wrong, this is right. It's just a guide, and this is one of those things that could potentially help you inside the game. So it does look like this is going to be based specifically by chapters, but one thing I saw in here that was kind of intriguing to me is it says note in later chapters. It looks like that some of these stages will have 2 or 3 waves, meaning that you'll be going in with 10 or 15 heroes, kind of like you do with the advanced arena. But starting off right at the bottom, we have Bazam and Amanda. Now, I've said before, Bazam is not one that I invest in, even though it is a dark hero, and I do believe that dark heroes can be incredibly strong. This is one that I really don't use, and even on my pay-to-win one, I try not to even invest in it. Amanda, on the other hand, I have her at a pretty high stars. I don't play her at all, but I will say that whole attack debuff that she has can be pretty annoying when you're going up against an enemy team and they tuck her right in the back behind a Rochelle. It can be super annoying, but on the offense side, it doesn't really seem to be anything that I'm using. Onto the B tier, and this is where they put my Babu. Now, as I said, I'm a big fan of Babu, and like they said in the guide, use this with a kind of grain of salt. If you do have one at a higher star, he might be performing better, but my Babu is sitting at 19 stars right now, so I might be a little bit biased because a lot of my other heroes aren't there. Comparing Babu to another hero at 19 stars, I might see different results and go, yep, Babu isn't really holding up the way I expect. But Peru and Aru are two that I can definitely get on board with this. Lagu, on the other hand, I do find him useful inside the actual mimics itself, but I haven't really used him too much otherwise. He is pretty tanky, but that's all I really use him for. Now, Fleta and Ripper, on the other hand, I know a lot of people love Fleta. I know a lot of people are going to probably disagree with seeing this on here, but for me, Fleta is not one that I typically use myself, and even Ripper is one that I have pretty high start up on my pay-to-win one. I use it as a filler ADC, but when it comes down to it, I don't really see big numbers. It's not like putting numbers out like I'd see from a Sanders or a Lilith or even a Milia on it. So I really guess I have to agree with this one here, even though I really don't know what I'm talking about. And when I say I don't know what I'm talking about, I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to going up against heroes inside chapter 37. Obviously, I know what the stats are, but I'm going to take it for the word on this, that this is probably accurate, based by this is 15 people deciding on what they think should go. For B+, we have Harfa, Tanya, and Aruru. All 3 of these are ones that I really don't use. Now, my Tanya is not really start up on either of my accounts, but I will say it is kind of one of those things I keep an eye on. I don't know if I necessarily put her here. I might rank her up one, but like I said, I haven't played with her. I really don't know. Harfa, on the other hand, is somebody that I hardly ever use. Yeah, there's the silence out there that can be annoying, but I know when it comes to Aruru, this is one that I never even touch. I might have actually switched the spot of Aruru with Babu personally, but that's just me. But as far as going in with Calyx, that's one of those things where it's like the first hero you get inside the game. It looks kind of cool going and hitting multiple enemies. It's not really a threat when I'm going up against a Calyx. I mean, yes, they can be annoying if you're in bad positioning on it, but that's not one I'm really too concerned about. Rakan was actually one I saw inside the arena today. I saved up a whole bunch of them, got myself up to 2nd place for the ranking on it, and somebody was actually using Rakan in there, and I was kind of surprised, like, oh, who's using Rakan on that? Now I know Rakan does throw some silences out there, removing debuffs, so they can be pretty dangerous with also having a pretty hard attack along with a shield. So like I said, it's not a hero that I typically use. You look at the humans and you go, oh, do I use Rakan or do I use Rochelle? No brainer on that one. Rochelle's the way to go. But Odelia, on the other hand here, this is one that I actually like, and this is one that I've been using quite a bit on my pay-to-win account. We are getting close to switching over to Selena, but I do like having the fact of having Odelia. I like the heal. Yes, it's only up to round 4. Usually if I'm going to have somebody that's squishy inside the party that's going to die quick, or somebody that kind of holds out, it is going to be nice having that revive within that 4 round, but the second you get out of it, pretty much she's just doing a stun for you. So looking at this so far, the only ones I'd probably move around and kick up a little bit would be Babu, would be Fleta, and would be Odelia. Looking at A-, we have Ashe, Xenon, and Telfar. And just looking at these 3 together, I think this could actually be a pretty dangerous start for a team comp. Ashe is going to have the reduced defense to heroes that are hit, which is something that can be pretty freaking annoying, especially if you're paired up with a high damage dealer on a team, which in this situation, Telfar actually does some decent damage when you get it up in some stars. Now you throw Xenon out there, which is going to reduce the healing of the heroes that get hit. It's kind of like a good mix together. You got one that reduces defense, one that reduces the healing, and another one that's just going to hit pretty hard. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to go and change my team comp to run those 3, but that can just kind of give you an idea of how you should be building your teams inside and look for those synergies. Moving on to the A class, we had Void, Abala, Olga, and Adina. Now, Abala, as we all know, is great for tanking those heavy hitters. Void is one that I just cannot get leveled up or haven't really invested in, but the fact that whoever Void kills cannot be revived is another dangerous way, plus they kind of do hit pretty hard. At the start of each round, also releasing heroes from CC, and same thing with Olga out there too. Now, I am running Olga and pushing that to 20 stars on the pay-to-win account, and I gotta say, you know, for something that you can just go and get out of the Soul Shop there, or wherever one it is for 1,500, she's not bad, and it is kind of helpful to have those counterattacks in there. If you ever go up against a high star Olga and you get them below the percentage of health, whatever it is, and they start getting those counters every single time, it starts beating up on you pretty good. And Adina is another one, the fact that everybody puts their high damage dealer or a majority of their good damage dealers in the back row. Adina having that with the freeze is definitely a very helpful thing. She's one that I cycle in on the pay to win one all the time if I am struggling on those boss stages and so on. For the A+, we have Coco, we have Galan, we have Fiona, Kayan, and Sol. Now, Coco, I will say I like the idea of removing enemy buffs, and this is one that I just unfortunately have not gotten a lot of Cocos, but if I did, I probably would be playing with her a lot more. Galan, on the other hand, is one that I never play with at all. I'm not really a fan, but I see a lot of people talking of how powerful that sandstorm can be, especially with the engraving on it, making it where that sandstorm state can last a little longer. Depending on who you're going up against, it could be quite useful, and I know that people are apparently wrecking with Galan. Fiona with the hypnotic scent on top of the healing. Now, a healer that doesn't have to be adjacent like Almond is definitely ideal in a lot of situations, and throwing that hypnotic scent on there, which when a hero hits it, they have that hypnotic scent, they're in a CC control environment, meaning that they're pretty much going to lose a turn. Fiona was one that I played a lot in the early games and kind of backed off a little bit, but every now and then I will kind of cycle in if I'm not working with Odelia. Kayan, of course, we know my thoughts on that, both of my accounts at 20 stars. This is my main damage dealer inside the game. Now, where they ranked it, am I pleased with it? Not really, but I knew going into this, and from what I've heard people say in the past, that Kayan does fall off towards the late game. And being that I use Kayan a lot, there's one hero that I always hate going up against, and that is going to be Sol, especially in the fact of having it where I get my shield bubble, that fire is doing more damage than what I have for regenerating health, and my Kayan just drops immediately after getting knocked down the first time. Now, I haven't been crazy about Sol that much. It's not one that I really use. I do have them at a pretty high star. Throwing one of the runes on there that gets the double hits, the Might of Despair, is a great way to go with it. But this is kind of the first one we're seeing in this tier list here that has that damage over time. I mean, Telfar is going to have a bleed on there, but it's not going to be hitting all the heroes like Sol, for example. So looking at the A classes, if there was anybody I move around, obviously I'm going to say Kion because that's who I've been pushing, but he might actually be fitting exactly where he needs to be on this. I mean, I at least like to go and throw him on an S- just to say that he is part of the S class, but that's just me being me, so use this how you want to. That's just my thought on it. Going into the S classes though, there's 4 different rankings on this, and the first one you can see here is Zeke and Zagrako. With the event going on right now, Zeke is one that I'm trying to invest in. Still don't have them at a high stars, but knowing that going up against them, having a similar attack, kind of like Kion's there of hitting in a row, is definitely a pain in the butt. Not to mention, there's a chance of throwing a silence out there. Now, when you finally do get them into the engraving, they get a pretty decent counter attack. So that's something I've been looking forward to. I've been saying that Zeke is a very powerful hero, but unfortunately, I don't have the stars behind it to really do some good testing. I will say, on the other hand, Zagrako is one that I could say is definitely helping me out a ton, at least getting through chapter 30 and on to chapter 31. Just because of the fact of that revive every 2 rounds, even though they might die pretty quick, they pop up 2 rounds later. They might tank that 1 hit that's going to keep the other hero alive. And not to mention the stunning of all the adjacent enemies, I definitely am a fan of Zagrako, and I'm still pushing him. We're going to try to get him to 20 stars. Dexter and Almond are 2 that I've lived by for a while. Dexter, I haven't really been using that much, but having that initial attack increase for all adjacent allies, not to mention giving an attack buff once Dexter finally dies, giving it to the highest hero, and then also having a little bit of healing inside there too. Almond, on the other hand, with the healing over time, I really can't say anything bad about Almond. I'm still using him all the time. The only thing that can be a pain is when you do have a situation where you want to use a Dexter and use an Almond, or even use an Almond with a Milia. Anytime you have 2 heroes that require adjacent allies, it can be a little bit of tough, because then you're left with the decision of, do I want to have everybody getting healed, or do I want to get everybody having that attack or crit bonus? Now, also on here, we have Delikus and we have Adora. Now, Delikus, great for having that chain attack, and Adora, great for having that whole stun of the puppet ability there, the CC, I should say. And I know a lot of people keep on saying that Adora is an absolute beast. I have not played with her a bunch. I'm working on getting her to 11 stars. Both Delikus and Adora are going to have ways to reduce enemy energy inside the game, which is kind of a huge thing when you're relying on your active skills and you get your energy reduced, kind of like Lilith does there, for example. It makes it very hard to get those big hits out. So I can really see the thought process of why they're putting both of these in S class. Well, I should say S- class, because now we're actually going into the S class. But as you can see here, we have Oleon, Newell, we have Lilith, we have Ken, and then we have Milia. And I've said it all this time coming along, when it comes towards the end, later portion of the game, you're really going to want to invest in these light and dark heroes. The only light and dark hero we haven't seen in these higher S classes so far is Bazam, which obviously was ranked all the way at the bottom. Now, Oleon, I've been using inside the Mimic for the whole penetration thing, which is going to give you better chances of the enemy not dodging, meaning that you're going to be doing a full hit of 100%, or in a situation of crit, doing a 200%. When somebody does dodge, that is going to reduce the damage that they take by half, so this is a nice way to make sure that that doesn't happen. Newell, on the other hand, isn't one that I really use a lot inside the game. Actually, really don't use them at all. Don't have them at a high star, but when I do go up against them, they can be pretty annoying. They are going to have those 3 random attacks there. They are going to have adding energy. And I think even once they get engraving, they do extra damage towards intelligence type heroes. So figure any type of wizard out there, like your Almond, your Lulu, they're going to be really hurting on them. Lilith, on the other hand, we all know how much I'm loving her and a huge fan of her. That's my go-to damage dealer. Besides having Kion at 20 stars, Lilith is really the one I try to build around when going into the Sanctum, for example, just to get all that energy, get those 7 waves of hits out, and just totally annihilate. And that's the same thing that goes with Milia too. You've seen it before where Milia gets that first hit in, kills the hero, and then just moves and starts wiping out every other hero inside the game. Absolute beast. I know a lot of people say that Milia eventually falls off, but obviously in this chart here, they're not really too concerned about that. Ken, on the other hand, I'm not really too certain if I agree with where this is, but once again, I don't have my Ken's engraving up. Ken is going to be big on the chain attack, kind of like you would see with Delica's to some extent, but they are going to give a bleeding effect, pretty much a damage over time for those enemies that are hit. And when they do get the engraving, they're going to be doing increased damage to those bleeding enemies. So maybe that's where it's coming in. I know I've seen a lot of people use it, I think in the Mimic is one of those spots, or maybe even in the Dimensional Rift. But for me, haven't had enough experience with it to really see. So I'll just have to take their word for it on this one. For moving on to the S+, we have Selena, Taros, Carmen, we have Sanders, and then also Benzo. Now, Selena is one that I'm going after. Having the engraving on that, not only do you get the one heal anytime throughout the game when Selena is alive, but when she also dies, she'll be healing somebody too. So that's kind of the sought after healer inside the game. If you can get one high enough stars on it, even at a lower stars, having that heal anytime, or that revive, I should say, is ideal. A lot of people, though, have said that Taros absolutely wrecks. Not one that I've invested in, but a lot of people have been telling me, man, you really got to get Taros up there. He can be an absolute beast. Benzo, on the other hand, is killing it for me. I've had some huge numbers. I'm still trying to figure out the red Mimic and the purple Mimic. And when it comes down to it, Benzo is putting up like good, like 80, 90 million damage, putting out like 10 times more damage than my other heroes. I know a lot of people have said the same thing about Carmen, and I have gotten the engraving at least to that level 10 for Carmen. I really haven't seen that big push or those big numbers that she's putting out, but I have seen other people do some decent numbers, so I could see where this comes into play. And we've all seen Sanders himself put out huge freaking like 245 million. You look at some of the people going in on the Abyss or even the Mimic, and you look to see what their healers are doing, and you just see all these tiny little lines, and then you just see this Sanders line of this massive damage. So I get why people do it. I probably should invest more on it. That penetration is huge, and especially going into that ghost phase is where that big hit comes from. But what they're throwing in the SS is going to be Lulu and Rochelle. Now, Lulu is one that I'm all about. I've even thrown a Might of Despair on my Lulu just to get those 2 attacks right in a row, or the 2 attack buffs, I should say. I'm finding that pretty freaking phenomenal inside the game. So Lulu is one that I will stand by all the way on this. I'm definitely a believer of the SS class. Rochelle, you know, as far as I played the game, Rochelle was the last hero for me to get starred up. And I have switched Rochelle in. I have gotten him up to 11 stars. Would I put him in SS class? I'm not really certain. I would have more seen my Lilith up there inside there, but I do see why people go and like Rochelle. Obviously, you throw a Benzel out there, there goes the shield. The only thing that's sitting left on it is going to be the invincibility for however many rounds it is. But then again, we're talking 15 stars to 20 stars here. That invincibility is going to last longer than 1 round. So I'm guessing that's probably where that's going to come into play. Actually, I just looked it up there. It's still 1 round for that invincibility. But when you do have a shield, you are going to get an attack and crit rate increase for having a shield. So I think that's kind of a plus. But like I said, my Benzel is just going to shut that down immediately and not even make it a concern. So I guess once again, this is all about what heroes you're going up against and how that applies to the team that you're going to build. But really, I don't think this is a terrible tier list to go for. I'm going to try to invest in some of these heroes that I'm seeing higher up and see how it plays out, because I'm still at chapter 31 and these people are obviously a lot further than me. But as I said in the beginning of the video, if you have a hero that's 3 or 4 stars higher than another one that you see on this list here, that higher star is always going to play out to be the best. Well, maybe not play out to be the best, but still perform better than a lower star hero. So I'm really curious to see what one of these tier lists look like when they have a late game one and you pair 20 star heroes across the board, full max engraving. Really curious to see how that plays out. But if you guys want to know what I'm going for in this current event right now, then take a look at this video right here. Thanks for watching, and remember, I pick my butt.